Public trust, either be it an elective position or an appointive position, at whatever capacity, is a duty bearer. If one works for any ministry, State Department, agency, parastatal, they are effectively duty bearers. That is to say that they have a duty to the people, because one way or the other, their role, the function, the office they hold can be traced back into the Constitution and the founding documents of the Republic and other laws of the land. On the flip side, we have rights holders who are the people that we serve. And because all of you who are seated here, or vast majority of you, serve within either the State Department for Public Service or directly under the auspices of the Public Service Commission, you are familiar with the clarion call of the Public Service Commission that we or you are serving in a manner that would be said to be citizen-centric. When you talk about citizen-centricism, the citizen you're talking about is the rights holder. They have inalienable rights that are enshrined in the Constitution and granted to them in that, as according to the documents and the law of the land. The civil society, therefore, or civil society organizations, therefore, do not compete against government, but rather complement the work of government. It is a multi-pronged approach where government has a role that it plays, the civil society has a role that it plays, the private sector have a role that it plays, and the private citizens equally play their significant roles. And so today it's important for us to emphasize that now more than ever, it is important for there to exist mutually beneficial, but mostly beneficial to the rights holders, the citizens that we serve. There needs to exist a structured, an intentional, and an accountable multi-stakeholder collaboration between the public sector and the civil service. If not for any other reason, but mainly because this would allow us to have better policy design through real-life insights. The civil society organizations work with the everyday Kenyan, everyday citizen. And so this then means that citizens experience policies and the CSOs help to translate these policies. You see, CSOs work deeply and they are entrenched and embedded in the communities at the grassroots. This allows them to bring the voices, the needs, and the lived realities of the 55 plus million Kenyans directly to policy conversations, ensuring that the government action that follows is therefore relevant, responsive, and inclusive. This multi-stakeholder collaboration would also allow expanded reach to the margins. This means that the government interventions would not be just reaching those who are in the mainstream platforms of engaging governments, but also those who are in the margins. Stronger accountability and transparency is enhanced when CSOs collaborate, because this way the citizens feel seen and governments then build trust with the people. There is more equitable service delivery if there is multi-stakeholder collaboration in the area of citizen centricism. By working together, governments and civil society organizations can identify systemic gaps, especially in education, in healthcare, economic inclusion, and co-create solutions that are relevant, that are timely, and that meet people where they are, in their communities, in their lived realities. Resilient communities and institutions is also one of the outcomes that can be evidenced when there's multi-stakeholder collaboration, especially between the public sector and the civil society organizations. People in everyday communities thrive when systems listen and adapt. When collaboration is genuine, ladies and gentlemen, it empowers communities to co-own their development. It fosters innovation and creates institutions that reflect the needs and aspirations of the people that they serve. Inclusive governance, as you would know, is a shared mandate for and not a solo mission. No single sector, whether that be government, the civil society, or even private sector, can deliver inclusive governance by themselves. Lasting change demands co-creation, especially in the ever-changing world that we live in today. When the civil society brings grassroots insights, advocacy, pressure, and community trust, on the other side, the public sector holds the formal authority, the distribution of resources and policy levers that change lives every day. Ladies and gentlemen, co-ownership improves policy and accountability. When civil society, state actors co-own policies, they are more context responsive and more likely to succeed. Because those of us in the civil society space offer lived experiences of the communities that we work with and for, and provide rapid feedback, whereas government ensures institutionalization and resourcing of the insights that are coming from the grassroots. What can happen is the need to strengthen public participatory budgeting with civil society observers. There's need to adopt open governance dashboards that reflect citizen inputs, progress, and feedback. And the civil society should be encouraged to sit on policy review panels other than being locked out. As I head towards my conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, inclusion like what we call for this afternoon means listening to the margins, women, young people, persons with disability, ethnic minorities, the marginalized, and often not spoken with, but we tend to speak for them. This collaboration that we call is placing the people at the center, that when we stand to speak, we are not speaking for the people, but we are speaking with the people. More of amplifying their voices, granting them the mic to say what their experiences are. CSOs are rooted in lived realities. There's need to strengthen quotas in inclusion, for inclusion in public advisory boards. There's need to translate public policy and public participation materials into accessible formats and languages. Part of the offset or offshoot of the 2010 Constitution is public participation, both at the national and the county level. But what we have seen when we are doing our work is that many times this is done to fulfill righteousness rather than to genuinely include and act on the voices and insights of the people. And so those who have the responsibility to legislate at the national level and the different county levels have to intentionally mainstream public participation in law so that then the process is clear, it is accountable, it is traceable and verifiable. As I finish, this collaboration, if mainstreamed and intentionally resourced and applied, will unlock innovation in service delivery. Joint problem solving between sectors lead to creative solutions and efficient delivery. Civil societies pilot and test the innovation while government scales and sustains these initiatives and interventions. Quick examples, in Rwanda, there is what they call the Imihigo model, which is a performance management system that uses traditional Rwanda cultural practices to motivate local leaders and government officials to achieve specific development goals. If this were to be brought home, it would mean that your niece and your uncle and my grandmother in the village have an opportunity to carry out performance management and evaluation and monitoring for the local chief, for the ward administrator, for the sub-chief, which does not happen often. And this would enhance service delivery. In Makueni County, in the reign of Governor Professor Kivutha Kibwana, there was instituted what was called community-driven development, where communities themselves would determine what they urgently need with the understanding of the limited nature of resources. They would design their solutions, the work would go to one of their own, they would supervise the work themselves. Many times, even the community members would volunteer at these sites to achieve the standards that they desire and deserve for themselves. The Constituency Development Fund, at its inception in 2003 and the years that followed, had the people at the center, where the people determined what they needed in their communities, in their village, where they needed a borehole, where they needed a road, where they needed an ECD center. That is what the kind of innovation in service delivery that this collaboration owes to bring to our people. Therefore, as I join my fellow ladies and gentlemen in the minutes to follow to break down this conversation further, I place a clarion call to the duty bearers who are in this room today to remember that they do not serve for themselves, but we serve for the people. That at the center of everything we do has to be the rights holder. That what we do, the Lord will sit in, we do so in trust for the people, whom the Constitution has told that ultimate and absolute, or rather sovereign power belongs to. And so they have donated that power to duty bearers. This afternoon, our clarion call is for collaboration between public sector and the civil society organization for the benefit of the rights holder. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe SACWA deserves more heartier clap than that for that well-presented program. If I'm to add on, if I'm to write on what he has said, that is a very efficacious presentation, and the eloquence in it, we cannot fairly say that Karen was not represented. We are thankful for she found it worth to send you, and you've equally made a good presentation to us in relation to how we fill the gaps, the relationship between us CSOs and the government, and the collaboration that we can have. It is now my singular honor and duty to move to the next level, whereby I will be inviting my panelists to go to the area set for the panel. And we would have had Mrs. Ipato Korema Sorum, who would have been our guest, but this afternoon he's represented by Hashim Musa Yusuf, who serves as the Director Policy and Research in Anti-FGM, accomplished education leader with over 20 years of experience, over 20 years of teaching, school leadership and education administration experience, spanning roles of teachers and school principals, serves as the Deputy Governor, Wajir County. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Hashim Musa Yusuf as he takes the seat where the panel will be. It is also my privilege to invite my good friend, who serves as the Director of Programs and Research at the National Gender and Equity Commission. He's a gender practitioner with a background and experience in gender research and metrics, social and behavior programming. He has been a gender equality and social inclusion and development span of 20 and above years. This is none other than Mr. Paul Kuria, OGW. Karibu, sir. Let's appreciate him as he takes the seat down, kindly, and secure the seat on my right, extreme right, for the moderator. So all of us to move to the second, third, fourth as we leave the first one for the moderator. I'm also privileged this afternoon to introduce a good friend of mine, co-founder and chief innovation officer at Vilgo Africa, an early stage business incubator and impact investor to seek to support startups and global social impact focus in African region. He has a career span of over 20 and 30 years in field of academia, research, development, technological innovation, and development entrepreneurship in global health across the East African region. His key skills in biomedical research, strengthening health systems, intellectual property, technology, commercialization, social entrepreneurship, and impact investment. And this is none other than Dr. Robert Karanja. Let's appreciate Dr. as he takes his position at our area there. I also request Mr. Sakwa to join the panelists as I bring on board our Deputy Director, Institute of Public Service, Ethics and Integrity, Kenya School of Government, Lo Kabete, with a strong background of capacity building, policy formulation, and inclusive development, leading programs focused on gender responsibilities and leadership, youth empowerment, and social equity. And this is none other than Dr. Florence Kithenji. Let's appreciate our moderator as she takes her seat. Makofi mazuri jameni kwa moderator wetu, ajihisi kwamba tumemsubiri aweze kutuongoza katika kipindi hicho. And as I said earlier, this is a focus. I mean, it's a topic that all of us need to focus because we are being asked what is our role between us and the CSOs. The CSOs are being asked what is their role between us and the government. So let's take in interest. Let us participate. Let us give the moderator and the panelist easy time so that I told you, once they see the audience in the house, they will feel strong enough to proceed with the program. Madam Moderator, Dr. Florence, are we together?
Yes, we are.
Kindly proceed.
Thank you very much. I want to first of all start by thanking the 4 very able gentlemen. You realize we had ladies on our program, and they were appropriately given. Gentlemen came to represent us. Can we clap for them first of all? And I also want to clap for our very able presenter, Bwana Sakwa. He has really articulated it well. I wanted to ask you, Bwana Sakwa, what are some of your success stories? Because I'm sure there are issues you'd want to talk about. And gentlemen, I'm going to be asking you about the success stories. That's the first question. Kindly go ahead.
As I was introduced, I work for Emerging Leaders Foundation Africa, and we work with and for young people in Kenya in the areas of leadership development and governance. We have many success stories in this facet of collaborating with the public sector. But the one I want to highlight now is one that is closer home to all of you. For the last 3 years, we have worked with the Public Service Commission and designed a 12-month leadership fellowship together with the Public Service Commission, and that focused on supporting, equipping, and nurturing young leaders in the public service with leadership capacity, public service ethos, and the staying power. And we are now in the 3rd cohort. In the first cohort, we had 51 fellows. Second cohort, we had 65 fellows. In the 3rd cohort, we are looking at about 80 fellows. And these fellows, Daktari, are drawn from all the 47 counties. And they are drawn from as many state departments as you can name them. And the success stories are, just a quick example, we just finished doing the impact evaluation report for cohort 1. And the insights that are coming out of that is even the Deputy CEO for the Public Service Commission was giving us their own experience. They have seen in the history of the public service, young public servants rising through the ranks in the fastest way possible. They have not seen, when I received an invitation for this session, it came from one of our alumni in that program who works with the public in the Ministry of Public Service. And when I looked at her email signature, 3 years later, it is almost 2 levels higher than it was when she first joined the Public Service Emerging Leaders Fellowship. One other fellow who worked in, can't remember the State Department, was picked by the PS to go to the Nairobi Rivers Commission and set up the HR unit. This is a young lady who's been in the public service for less than 3 years and is under 35 years, now heading the HR department at the Nairobi Rivers Commission because of the capacity that has been seen as a result of this fellowship.
Clap for that. That's a great achievement, right? That's great, that's great. And especially because we want our young people to really move and move up. Daktari, what are your success stories? Remember, I want first to begin with the success stories so that we can see what has been done. Karibu sana, sir.
Thank you so much. So maybe I just kind of give a bit of the context. As you heard, I'm a biomedical scientist. And the best way I kind of think of describing myself is to say, how do we achieve development through entrepreneurship? And the way we do so is to think of, especially in the health sector, the need for addressing the needs, the health needs we have as a continent, as Africa. And truth be told, we have a lot of needs. Now, needs is not equals to market opportunity. So we are one of the most neglected markets globally. And if you were to think of, for example, if you think of the statistics for Africa, we shoulder about 25% of the global disease burden. But when you look at the pharmaceutical sector and you ask, where do you guys make your money? Africa is typically between 1% to 4% of all the revenues that the industry makes globally. So we are very neglected. And it shows in our life expectancy, maternal mortality, neonatal mortality, all these statistics, HIV, TB, malaria. So long story short, there's lots of opportunity. So how do we, opportunity for transforming our problems into market opportunities? And a good area I can show you, for example, is in the place of cancer. And I think today, almost all of us If you're not affected by cancer, there's somebody in your family or close to you who's been affected by cancer. And it's really one of those big problems because normally cancer is one of those things that you say can actually lead to you becoming bankrupt. You'll either be forced to sell off land, assets, because the treatment is very expensive. So what we're doing, and I am no longer the Chief Innovation Officer at Vilgro. I actually now am with BioLinks Africa, which is a closely related partner company of Vilgro. So I'm also a co-founder. But at BioLinks Africa, what we're basically doing is to ask, how can we identify solutions for cancer? So we're actually undertaking research that speaks to early detection and diagnosis. We're also interested in treatments and, for cancer. And this can be either therapeutics, vaccine, gene therapy, what have you. Now, why do we think we can take on cancer here and beat the rest of the world? This is because in Africa, especially in East Africa, we have the highest genetic diversity within the human race. So if you're looking for drugs and vaccines, the last 10, 15 years, what has been driving the world is something called precision medicine. We can design and develop drugs for you as an individual. So it may not work for your neighbor, but it will work for you, and vice versa. Now, that means we have an opportunity, because of our genetic diversity, to have a better chance of discovering new drugs and vaccines from our genetic diversity more than anywhere else in the world. Of course, it takes a lot of work. And today we are very fortunate because we have the fourth industrial revolution, which basically means we can harness AI and machine learning. And to me, AI and machine learning is the equivalent of the mobile phone. If you can think of our lives before M-Pesa and after M-Pesa, that is what I'm trying to describe. It is transformative. Just to get to the success story. So last year, one of the things we did is we carried out some work in Meru County, and we were basically able to develop a diagnostic test for prostate cancer that just requires a blood sample. You don't need to be able to get it's a very invasive surgery procedure to get a biopsy. And so that is one particular patent that, we're applying for, that I'm very proud of. More importantly, even as we do research, there's opportunities to impact the community. And we were able to introduce precision medicine in this country for the patients that we worked with in our clinical study. And that basically led to helping them understand what drugs work for them. We discovered, for example, the number one prescribed drug for prostate cancer in Kenya, 80% of those patients would have been adversely affected by the side effects of that drug, and it would not have helped them at all. So we have been able to tell the doctors, based on these patients, each of them, their genomic makeup, please use this drug. And you are able to do it for free. So this is how you talk about
I think we should be clapping. That is free. That is very good.
This is how you're able to use business to impact the community. Because we did it as a clinical study, we were able to say above and beyond what the samples, biological samples, medical records are getting from you for our research, we can be able to go the extra step of making sure that there's something in it for you. There's a big problem we're having nowadays in terms of just the ability to do clinical trials, for example. There's a lot of regulatory issues, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation that affects us as a community. And we saw this even during COVID, when people started saying, can we do clinical trials for the COVID vaccine in Africa? Most of us were saying, watu wataka kututumia. And sometimes there's a truth to that. I'm not against, but I'm also saying we also need to understand two things. The first one is a lot of drugs and vaccines that have been developed are not working for us.
So let me ask you, just to take you back a step, what was that one success story that you'd point at and say, besides now, we've mentioned very appropriately the one on prostate cancer. Yes. Shall I pick that as the main one?
That's the main one,
Let me pick that one. And great, kudos. Very good work. Director Yusuf, you are coming from the anti-FGM board as a director, and in fact, it is one of the areas that we need to hear. What are the success stories? Karibu sana.
My name is Hashim, as our moderator have said. I'm Director of Policy and Research Anti-FGM Board. There are many success stories in the fight against FGM. But before that, in 1995, we had the Beijing Conference, which we just celebrated the 3rd anniversary in March this year on the Commission of the Status of Women 69. And in 1995, our president with a bigger delegation, the first women cabinet secretary, minister, accompanied to be the president to Beijing. And you can remember the issues that were there, issues around gender, which most African countries did not receive well. But today, after 30 years, in some remote places in Kenya, people are talking about gender equality. They are talking about the fight against harmful practices. And most importantly, we have achieved that through collaboration with our CSOs and our CBOs. Today, in communities like Northeastern, where we have Somalis, where we could not talk about FGM in public, we have women rights groups which are in town giving talks in radio shows and abandoning FGM. That is something that could not be imagined in the last 20 years or even last 10 years. And I want to point
something worth clapping about, isn't it? Yeah.
And I want to point out specifically a village called Kamude, 40 kilometers from Garissa Township. And I know there's a representative from Garissa representing the governor of Garissa County, Nasra. That is where a women's rights network was formed, Madam Moderator, before even the advent of the Anti-FGM Act. Because a lady was cut, she was bleeding in the house, and nobody could report even to the chief or anybody. That is before even 2011 when we had the act. So you can imagine that though they formed a rights movement, they had to get a donkey and to ferry the lady to hospital. And they were not able to report. That women rights group is active now. They have been recognized by state actors and also other non-governmental organizations. So that's a big thing for our people. We have gone very far, and I'm saying that again, we have achieved that through the participation of our CSOs. Today, there are vibrant CBO called Kamude Women Rights Network. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Clap for him again. Did you hear the name Kamude Women? Kamude Women Rights Network. That's beautiful. Paul, over to you. Please give us your one success story. I'm just excited. This is good.
Thank you so much,
Yes,
Moderator. And first of all, I would like to be the client of the prostate trial. And I hope that will be a success to come and narrate here in the next 2026 Public Service Day. Kuria Paul is my name, and I work for the National Gender Equality Commission, whose mandate, put simply, is taking the last first. And every category of the population that Sako has talked about, be they older members of society, where all of you are heading to after the age of 60, whether it is the women, whether it is the girls, whether it's the children, anyone who has not attained the age of 18, whether it is a person with disability or small communities, ethnic minorities as well, and marginalized populations. If you look at that, there are 6 populations that in our constitution and international instruments are defined as the special interest groups. They are completely vulnerable because the state, the duty bearers, the right holders themselves equally discriminate these populations to the edge. They are on the margins. Now, a successful story that I would like to share, and there are many for each of these categories, but allow me to pick one. In the year 2015, 2016, there was a huge intention in our country to increase the age of consent for sex. That meant today, the legal age of consent is 18 years. And there were all these intentions, the push and pull, that we could easily reduce this, like many other countries anyway, which are still developing and doing far much better than ourselves, to reduce it maybe to 16, 17, or even 15. In some countries, it goes down all the way to 14 years. But the National Gender and Equality Commission, together with many non-state actors, civil society organizations, came together and prepared a dialogue, whether they are city hall conversations or they are community-based conversations all over the country, and present a very convincing, persuasive evidence on why we cannot reduce the age of consent from 18 to any other age because of the consequential effect that is either overt or covert. We could easily see it, or we could just imagine out of this. So we could invite the medical scientists, you could invite the psychologists, the counselors, the parents, the gatekeepers, the elders, and everybody give one thought. Of course, there was antagonistic thought, but the main prevailing thought was that we cannot reduce the age of consent for sex in our country. And perhaps that could be leading to the reduction in child marriages that we are seeing today. That could be leading to the child abuse cases that we could be seeing as well. And that could be leading us to the very progressive jurisprudence that we have seen in our courts on violations of the rights of children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I love that his and Director Yusuf's, please clap for him. His and Director Yusuf's stories are almost aligning, and they are very powerful. I want to come back to you, Dr. Karanja. You remember, there is something about a helix. I think you have to tell us about it, the triple helix. Please continue on that line so that we can see how do we link that with what they have given and what the presenter has given. Karibu.
Okay, thank you. So again, we're in that heart of saying development. How do we achieve development through entrepreneurship? So the way there's this word we use, startups, which is a colloquial name for knowledge economy. And the reason I'm always passionate about this is because globally at this point, we are moving from aid to trade. And anybody who didn't know that, Trump has made it sure that we all now appreciate that aid is coming to an end and it's more of trade than aid. So the question is, how then do we still have social impact? How do we drive our agenda for development? And we need to then start thinking of moving from the extraction economy. Extraction economy is when we're sending out raw products and then we're importing the finished products, to start asking, how do we do value addition? So if we're going to do value addition, then it means we need to then appreciate technology more. And science and technology is basically the output of academia. So academia plays a very significant role as the knowledge base for us to develop. So, but academia cannot do this alone. So people can go to University of Nairobi and harass them and say, you've been teaching engineering here, you've been teaching medicine here, what do you have? What has come out of all this? As a professor, as a doctor, what good are you? And the reason we're not able to answer that question effectively is because it takes an ecosystem. And this ecosystem requires us to be able to coordinate and work hand in hand with the government. So the government plays several roles. The government sets the agenda. It's the government that wakes up and tells us we are now doing the bottom-up approach better. Before that, we were talking of the big four. So government sets the agenda. And once the government sets the agenda, then what happens is the research priorities are usually guided by these agendas. So the knowledge base starts to respond to that by asking, how do we do value addition for agriculture? How do you do real estate? How do you do 1, 2, 3? But then ultimately, what the academia comes up with is publications. And that does not help me or you. So what we need is private sector. Private sector comes in either as an investor or as an entrepreneur. So an investor is a person who just deploys cash. An entrepreneur is the operator who takes that cash and the knowledge from the university and translates it into products and services. And it's when we're able to get those three to work together harmoniously that you basically get national development. Within that mix, sometimes we forget the role of the civil society. And civil society plays an amazing role because not everything is going to be solved just by private sector alone. There are things that we need civil society to help us. And I can give you very many examples, but in the health sector, the first one that come across is COVID. Because when COVID happened, we were being left out as usual. Remember I said we only want 4% of the global market. And everybody was beginning to access vaccines. I remember in the US, they gave vaccines almost to children in nursery. Whereas for us, our doctors, our first line people are not getting access to vaccines. Why? But the only people who could shame the industry and those countries there to become humane was the civil society through powerful advocacy. But that powerful advocacy then now once, so there are areas that we have the need for civil society. Another good one is 20 years ago, similar scenario with HIV. Again, the entire world had forgotten about AIDS. But us in Africa, we were being ravaged by the disease, taking away people at their most productive age. And it took civil society to fight and say, these drugs, yes, they are on patent, but can we break these patents and, again, from aid to trade, so that we could now get generics manufactured for us in India and China at a price that we can afford, so that we can be able to so it takes the triple helix plus the civil society to actually advance development. And the civil society's role is especially that one, like I think we were told by my colleague here, that you don't leave anybody behind, because not the market system only works for those who can afford. So the issue here is that there are people who need but they can't afford, and until we pull them out of poverty, then we need to have something that speaks to their needs.
I love what you said, and I want to pick it up from there with you, James, yes. On the issue of multi-stakeholder collaboration, remember what Director Yusuf was talking about, and also what Paul talked about. And I also want you to lift it from there, all of us. When you talk about, we talk about civil society advocacy, there is that issue of multi-stakeholder collaboration for inclusive governance. Speak to that, and all of you will speak to it in accordance with what you have done and what we need to do. And as you speak to that also, mention one challenge, just one challenge that you have encountered, and then we shall look at how you dealt with it. So first of all, you're starting from there. Thank you.
All right. So multi-stakeholder collaboration. First of all, in my opening, I said that inclusive governance is not a solo sport. It has to be a combined effort. And that's where the multi-stakeholder collaboration comes in. And multi-stakeholder collaboration simply means we bring everyone who matters. We widen the net as much as possible. We set up a very big table that everyone can fit on that table, have a conversation, make a contribution, their voice is heard, and their insights are considered. So if you're talking about issues, say what Dr. Karanja has mentioned and Director Hashim as well as Bwana Paul mentioned, you are looking at, if we're talking about FGM, if you're talking about vaccine, who needs to be on this table? So it cannot no longer just be saying it's Ministry of Health that needs to be on the table, and we bring Ministry of Health and they're on the table. No, Ministry of Health has to be there. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has to be there, because now you're talking multilateral and bilateral conversations if you're talking vaccines. If you're talking FGM, we have to say who needs to be on the table. Government needs to be on the table through the Ministry of Social Services, I believe, but also the Anti-FGM Board needs to be there. The police need to be there. The media have to be there. The community leaders have to be there. The education sector, whether they are head teachers or patrons, they have to be on the table for us to have these conversations. Now, why is that important? It enriches the perspectives. If it were just ourselves in the civil society sector, we'll just be there talking our big jargon and then we go home, not understanding how media views, the perspective that the media views it, not understanding what cases are reported to the police, not understanding the community leaders, when the women gather in their chamas, what conversations are happening there. Because...
I'm going to pause you because I have a
Yes.
very burning question.
Yeah.
What makes it not possible for us to have those platforms? Because apparently, you've just said it, that police, media, education, because they have their perspective.
Yes.
What is that thing, that platform? Why
Yeah.
are they not able to access it from your point of view?
I will say two or three things. Number one is sectarianism. There is self-preservation. And self-preservation, I tie it to the second point, which is resources. And then I tie it to the third point, which is either mandate or legalism or lack thereof. That sectarianism and self-preservation, if the police want to be the ones, and this is an example, I am not saying the police, that's what they do. For instance, they would say they are the ones who want to fight FGM. So that when there is success 5 years to come, NGEK cannot claim, cannot report, and the FGM board should not report, so the credit should purely go to the police. And that's how I tie it to resources.
Pause. Director
Yes.
Yusuf, I'm going to have to pause you because your
Okay.
points are good. Director Yusuf, I want you to pick up that point on pronounce it?
Sectarianism.
Sectarianism. And then I also want Paul to pick up on resources, and Karanja, Dr. Karanja, you'll pick up on legalism and mandate. Let's hear what you have, because your points are the key points. How do you come in terms of the first, second, and third points? Let's hear you. And give me your own examples on that platform. Remember, he talked about a platform and being able to access it. Let's go with that.
Thank you. When we are doing, when the civil society is participating in governance, the civil society themselves are in different sectors, as has mentioned. And I just want to relate to the fight against FGM, because in the fight against FGM, we have many actors. We have law enforcement as a group, and then we have community as participants. Those are the CBOs, the CSOs, and all that. And just recently, something interesting has happened. 7 girls were cut in Meru. I'm sure you have seen over the news. And it was reported anonymously. So the girls were arrested, and they were taken to a police custody instead of being taken to the hospital. Because police say those are the protocols for all suspects. Very interesting thing. So we had to come in and write a letter to all county commissioners saying that they must first receive. In fact, whenever they undergo, although they are suspects, we say they are victims. Even if it's self-inflicted. So they are taken to hospital, given first aid, they are treated, and then we take them to court if they are above 18. And if they are below 18, of course, we have the issue of guardianship and parental responsibility. So that's an interesting thing. The other one is reporting on FGM, again, the media as a sector. So it was very interesting because the media were covering FGM cases in Migori, in Kisii, and the way they were covering is also stigmatizing those who have already undergone the cut. So we have to develop a media reporting tool for FGM. A very interesting scenario, which is now in action. We have trained them, and the Media Council, they have trained them, Media Owners Association. So we have a handbook on reporting on FGM, which shall not stigmatize those who have undergone FGM. And remember, for purpose of safeguarding those who have undergone FGM and whose cases are not in court, we call them survivors. And those whose cases are active in court for the purpose of the penal code, we are calling them victims. So these are things which we have to be very careful. And then interestingly, our suspects in court, according to the eyes of our cultural elders, are also perpetrators. They are saying, whoever has reported this, then he said he has undergone against the culture. So it's a very interesting scenario. So a child has reported FGM, which is facilitated by parents. So it's a very interesting, and it has happened to us where a lady called the board at 1 a.m. saying that tomorrow, if you don't come, she will undergo the cut at 6. So you can imagine that. And she had to report that through a friend who has a mobile phone because she can't implicate her parents. So at least there was a chief before morning. With the girl was rescued. So, and then the most important thing is every sector, the way they view FGM is a very interesting thing that they have to be. We have to develop an SOP for every sector so that this is how it is, this is how it should not be. There are even other CSOs who are saying we should not even use the word survivor because it's still stigmatizing for purpose of do no harm policy. Thank you.
Can I pick up from there, Paul? I know you have a lot to say about that because this is where you talk about the vulnerable. How do you capture that from what Director Yusuf has just said?
I think initially you had asked me to pick up the issue of resources, and it ties very quickly in the deprivation. The first thing that we measure discrimination is on resource allocation, power imbalances, constitutional authority, and the culture itself that will be manifested mainly in our country under patriarchism. And therefore, if you allow me to speak a little about the resources, then the 6 vulnerable populations that I mentioned are vulnerable because we have strained and stripped them of dignity. Those resources, even to get and have access to house, food, just basic health care, drinking water, or even somewhere to rest your head, or much importantly for children and other members of the society, deliberate neglect, psychological violence, emotional violence and torture. And for those who are perceived to be completely unuseful to our society, then we strip them of the liberty to speak, the liberty to walk around. Think of persons with disability, whether it's cognitive disability or psychosocial disability. And therefore, if those resources then are never provided, even to the duty bearers, or even to the right holders, or the intermediaries, and that includes the civil state, the non-state actors, then it becomes next to impossible to really speak on behalf, increase the contribution and engagement of those populations in development agenda. Unlike in Europe and America, where non-state actors, and a good example is Brazil, where the non-state actors, the feminist movement is funded by the government, irrespective of how much physical space is constrained. Finland is the same. So you find that the civil societies are not competitors to the government. They are not in any way an alternative to the government, but they complement to the interests of the government. And let me give you a good example. An example here is in the elections, because it is through the general elections that the most vulnerable populations exercises their basic civil and political right to vote their leaders, including the right to vote the women, the right to vote the young persons, the right to vote persons with disabilities competitively. Not to say that they have not presented themselves for the positions, they have. But what does the electoral system do? The electoral system, one, the campaigns become so expensive that no young person is likely to run for the office. No woman is likely to sustain and persevere the violence that comes with the elections. And no persons with disability would even dare to present their candidature because of the stigma, discrimination, and derogatory terms that will be used against them. Those are resources. And until we provide those populations with those significant basic minimum threshold of resources to turn around for them to participate actively in governance, to participate actively in administration, to participate actively in social protection. Social protection is not about thinking that you are so vulnerable and you need to receive. No. It's about I saying I have a role and a contribution in the protection pathway. Just to give an illustration. Thank you
so much. That is exactly what, when I think, Sakwa, you were presenting, you talked about a dichotomous society, having duty bearers and also responsibility holders. I have not heard you mention, and I think I wanted you to pick it up from there. Daktari had called you. And along this same line, what have you seen in terms of policy design that helps us to include both the duty bearers and the responsibility holders? If you could just pick up, and then Dr.
I think the quickest peak in terms of policy design is the public participation, which is an offshoot of the 2010 Constitution that demands that many decisions before they are made by government and state agencies, the people have to be included. That is one. Secondly, if you look at appointment in select bodies and authorities, the law, in many ways, again, there are legislations that require that different sectors of society are represented. For that reason, if you're setting up the Human Rights Commission, the state agency, then the CSOs are represented. If you're setting up this, the young people are represented. But public participation, much as the policy level has helped a lot, exists. It has only helped effectively and produced some enviable results at the county level. At the national level, we still have a lot of struggles because while at the county level there is still a struggle, but we are moving somewhere. I think it was James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, who says you have to have something for you to improve it. And while it has challenges, we are better off than where we were before the concept of public participation. That today, a dispensary cannot be set up in my village if the members who live in my village have not made their contribution to whether they need that dispensary, whether it should be set up, how big or small it should be. So that is the easiest example of where this collaboration or the inclusion, the working together between duty bearers and rights holders has been evidenced. The other one, I think I would cite Nyumba Kumi initiative, where the community policing, the primary responsibility of the security and safety of the people and property lies with the security agencies, police, and in some instances, the other bodies like the intelligence service and the investigative. But Nyumba Kumi allows the people, the rights holders, to also be part of the security protocols.
I love how you're thinking. Now, Dr. Karanja, pick it up from there. And as you pick it up, there was a statement, I think, James made on feeling seen. Remember you said that? Feeling seen. That was a very powerful one. I felt heard or I felt seen. Daktari, just continue from there. And I hope Director Yusuf, you are ready because I'm coming to you next on the same. Thank you.
So maybe I can just speak a bit on the issue of public participation, at least from my perspective and the way I look at it. For me, public participation is especially driven by these gadgets we have. Because today, like I said earlier, there's a lot of issues of misinformation and disinformation. And we are always constantly battling for the hearts of the community, the society. And the reality is that we're not the only voice. So whether it is government, whether it is the church, or whether it is, so there's always a counter narrative. And this issue of the counter narrative can be especially powerful. So if you think about, like I think during COVID, for example, because this was something that we all experienced just the other day, one of the challenges we saw was there was a huge conspiracy theory machine. Initially started in the US that they were calling the QAnon. I don't know how many of you remember QAnon. But today, if you talk about vaccination of children in places like the US, it's difficult. They've been so sensitized against vaccinations. But those vaccines, we know they've saved lives because we are using them. We are not getting all those issues that they're talking about. and we are fine. So we know vaccines work. But somebody introduced a notion that these things are what are leading to autism, they're leading to, without a whole lot of science to it. Now, that's purely misinformation. Then there's people who will calmly try to disinform. So they will actually create fake data and do fake science to persuade you. And if you think about us, so for us in Kenya, one of the things we did was, I'm a member of the Coalition for Health Research and Development, where I'm the co-chair. And it's a network of just private sector, academia, civil society, that just wants to make sure that people have access to health products. And so we got worried about it. And so what we did is two things. The first one was to reach out to the media and bring in journalists and start training them on the science of the vaccines so that whatever they're reporting would be accurate. So we needed, because we realized sometimes they may be genuinely trying to communicate the right thing, but nobody has taken the time to actually train them on the science of it. Then the second one we did was to reach out to the religious leaders. And this is the pastors, the bishops, the imams, and have a similar conversation so that we can be able to counter some of the misinformation and disinformation out there. And it worked. I think out of it all, I think the religious leaders were the most effective in getting people to listen.
I like that.
And it was a big lesson for me that even with the best, because you can give somebody something that can save their life, but they are Googling because we all know Dr. Google. To the point that you argue with the actual doctor. so at your own detriment. So in a situation like that one, how else do you deal with it? Because autonomy is a God-given right. We all make decisions for ourselves, but then how do we ensure that, one way or the other, there's an opportunity for the truth to have the center stage? Yeah.
I love that. I want to pick up from there, Director Yusuf and Paul, and then coming back to James. I'm looking at three words: power, the word power, because it's really at the center of all this. And there was also the word of, I still want to come back to being seen, the visibility. Power, and then you mentioned the religious leaders, but I want us to also look at the youth factor. If the director could pick up on the power, and Paul picks up on the youth factor, still on the same, how does civil society come in to balance the power issue, and how do we elevate the youth factor, and in a positive manner, and also the issue of being seen? Bring also, if you may, issues of overseas, issues of youth, of women, and anybody else you want to bring on board. Karibu.
Thank you. Power is created in two forms. One is power that you exercise because you are holding an office, you are overseeing an office. And then there's, I want to call them the others, assumed power, because you are in a position of influence And you are seeing that the official power, because of the office, is affecting virtually everybody, although the person is exercising official power. So I want to start with that. Before 2010 Constitution, everybody in Kenya was assumed that your thinking is represented by your member of parliament. So you don't need to talk. Or your councillor at the village level. So I don't need to say this is bad or this is good in Wajir or a village in Wajir, because all our thinking as a community or as an electorate is in the mind of our electoral representative, which does not consult, which we all has never consulted. And when that happens, then a popular opinion is neglected. And that happened in 2015, and we can all remember the consequence. Kenyans were coming out and were saying, the opinion of my MP is not our opinion. Na walikuwa wanasalamiwa, sijui kama mnakumbuka vizuri. So Parliament was exercising power that they were given to. But in cases where there are excesses, the public and the civil society will step to correct them. And that is something very important. Another interesting thing about power is that people have now trust in our judicial system. Remember, views that have undergone public participation were thrown out by the courts because they said it's not adequate. So that itself is a very positive thing. And I know up to now we do not have a policy or a law guiding public participation, but at least there's something which we usually go through it, and we have customized into our individual organizations. But the interesting thing about the power of the public is that eventually the one of the public will prevail over power which is exercised at the official level. And the reason is very easy. The person who is exercising official power is exercising on behalf of the people. So he must follow the people. And that's something very crucial. I want to go back to youth and gender. I know, according to the Constitution of Kenya, and if you were to follow it strictly, our parliament is supposed to have been dissolved, because you can remember the issue of two-thirds gender has not been passed. And there was a ruling on that as an advisory by Justice Maraga. But we said we are going there progressively, and that is something we need to appreciate. Look at the youth. We were told 70% of Kenya's population are youth. Do they occupy 70% of official positions of government? Do they harness 70% of the economic resources that we are channeling into our communities? So those are crucial questions which we need to ask. And those people who are exercising resources on behalf of the youth, are they doing the right things? For our women, gender issue is an issue which we have to address. But I'm happy to note that Kenya has signed international, continental, and regional instruments to empower our women economically, politically, and also in decision making. An example is Agenda 2063, and very more, Maputo Protocol of 2003, and we are actualizing that. And the report, CSW report of March this year, there are significant progress that has been made in Kenya. But I still would like them to agitate for their rightful place so that we are able to continue. So that is something we need to appreciate, and everybody has to think about it. But in relation to public service is where we have a problem, because being a public service event, I want every public servant to assume that as he sits in office from 8 to 5, he is being paid by the person he is serving indirectly. Perfect. It is very important we have to know that. If today you are out of office, maybe going for tea, you have taken 1 hour, your lunch you have taken 2 hours, and you have served 5 people. If they were to pay you 200 shillings, was that adequate for your salary? We have to go back and say that. Yes. So that you serve as many people as possible, you justify your salary at the end of the month. And that is very crucial. The other thing, Kenyans are more informed. And I am happy Dr. say this is our public participation tool. I want to give an example in Wajir, where somebody took a photo of an ambulance at night parked in a mirror den, where people take mirror, and it was circulating in social media, assuming that there was somebody who requires a referral at that time. So you can see how it can create power. So, but lastly, something very crucial. Assume the power must be exercised responsibly. That's also very important. Reason?
Talk to the issue of, I wanted actually to focus on, because you're looking at civil service advocacy and multi-stakeholder collaboration. I wanted us to pick up a bit on education. Because, and again now, I think someone mentioned about training. Are we training the young, the women, the vulnerable in a positive manner, not only to expect, but to be out of their way to be the ones creating change. Let me ask Paul maybe to chip in, even as I come back to you, Director. Right, Paul?
Okay. So you asked me to speak on the youth power, because perhaps this is the most underestimated factor of development in the Africa per se, because of the demographic dividends that it's put in a very complex language that the majority of the people, particularly not in the academia, may not easily understand it and appreciate it. But drawing a reflection back in 2010 and the devolution came into being, every institution, including that you work for, struggled, banks, name it, they were struggling to conceptualize devolution. And they understood devolution as creating and establishing a new office in a county X, Y, Z, and 47, where we are. And that has passed. The same thing is happening with us. All of us who are not in the youth bracket, and it is clearly defined. Young at heart, I don't understand. The Constitution clearly defines who young person is. That who has attained the age of 18 and has not attained the age of 35 are struggling to understand what is the youth factor. Who are the young people? Who are their aspirations? And what motivates them? And surprisingly so, or unfortunately so, is that the young persons have answers to all those because they are the young people. The profile of the young people today and the profile of young person, by the way, I'm 50 years old, so not of that age, is completely different. We are having a completely educated, well-informed, with high esteem, outgoing category of population who, of recent, we have now launched the world population data that shows an element of what is called the productive agency. Even the whole issue of production and reproduction is conceptualized differently from during my time. My time, or his time, and everybody who is sitting here was extractive. Today, it is digital extraction. And when we find them in digital space, we accuse them of digital activism. But that's their space. The foresight thinking and future thinking places ourselves in a very precarious position as adults. And young persons are way ahead because the kind of education we are presenting in today, the profile we are giving them, the needs really projects on how the future looks like. So the whole elements of topics and subjects like astronomy has gained currency. The invisible currency compared to printed notes, printed examinations, invigilations, marching on the parade so that we can look at your height and look at your masculinity for you to work in an intelligent space. That no longer works. And so even the non-state actors themselves are still in the space of the civil society, the organism of the civil society, the DNA of the civil society of 1950s, 1960s, 1990s, 2000. We are expecting a different format of the civil society organization that have been formed by the young person. His social movement is going to be completely different. I want to assure you, even the political parties are going to be completely different. The discourse is going to be completely different. And therefore, we have very little choice, if any, and I don't see any, other than to embrace the youth power and understand it is a factor of production, it is not an omission, it is a factor in the equation, and it is in the green, what we call the green fourth industrial revolution and the green human rights. The green human rights is defined as the future rights. They are the solidarity rights. They are the rights to the digitization, the rights to privacy, things that you could not think about a couple of years ago. Moving away from the red rights, from the blue rights, and now to the green rights, the very heavy rights that all of us must start embracing and knowing that they exist not for the purposes of today, but for the future, including the climate action and resilience in itself is a future right.
I love what you're saying. Now, I'm looking at it from now the outside, and I like that you said 50 and above and all that. Now, I want to find out, it is true, it is true. I want to find out, do we have international stakeholders at play? That is one question. I'll bring it to you, Daktari. And then do we have, because we talked about the youth and we talked about the vulnerable, I'm also wondering whether we have, and that is for you, Director, strengthening of local institutions, because we need to strengthen them. What you have done is commendable. So I want to start with you from your research perspective, or whichever of them, then you'll be the next one after Director. So what are we doing in terms of international stakeholders? And then Director Yusuf, I was asking you, Hashim, I was asking you, what are we doing to strengthen local institutions so that we see where we are going? Where are we going with all this? Karibuni.
So I think short answer is yes, we have international partners that come into play. And remember, as I was saying, talking about the issue of how we are moving from aid to trade, the question is, how do we get it right? How do we make sure we don't go into the excess of capitalism? And the answer to that is, what we call social entrepreneurship. Companies that are built, yes, they're for profit, but they're also thinking about green economy. Are we sustainable? Can we develop and industrialize in a better way than India or China so that we don't ruin our environment, for example? Can we also still have social impact, but still be profitable? And it just basically means sometimes taking a little less, not being so greedy to maximize profit, but having a bit of a trade-off to say, yes, I can be profitable, but because I live here, this is my home, and my children will grow up here, and their children, I'm more conscious to make sure what I'm building, what I'm doing has that element. So one of the other things now where the international issue comes in is, where does the money come from for investment? And we have a lot of funding coming to Kenya specifically for investments. So when you talk of Africa, 80% of all the venture capital in Africa typically goes to 4 countries: Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt. And Kenya last year, for example, we were talking about something like $600 million, a little over 600. In Kenya shillings, 78 billion shillings coming into startup ventures. And the idea here is that these startup ventures, and we are number 1 in the continent in terms of destination for venture capital. And all of this is coming from without. So, and so we need to appreciate that there are things that if we get right, they drive more investment to come to Kenya. Why Kenya? Why not Uganda? Why not Tanzania? Why are we beating Nigeria and South Africa? There are things that we're doing right. And so we need to understand what are the things that we're doing right, so that as we build our economy, as we move towards Vision 2030, we are able to work with that partnership of the foreign investors that are coming in. And maybe just to steal a little bit of that question of the kind of institutions we need, because I think it's really good to highlight this. The first one I'd want to highlight is we do need to understand how investors think. They're thinking, I'm coming in, I want a return on investment. How do they get that return on investment? And so we need to build an ecosystem again that responds to that. They need to be able to exit from that venture at a profit at a later stage. Our Nairobi Securities Exchange, for example, we've not had an IPO there for I don't know how long. So how do we provide exits for our investors? And what happens is if we don't create the exits here, they're going to go do those exits in their countries. So if you look at some of the big, we call them the unicorns, the startups that achieve a valuation of $1 billion. So for example, Jumia did their IPO where? In the New York Stock Exchange. And to me, it's horrendous, because what happens is you get a massive transfer of wealth from us, Africa, to the people who can participate in those IPOs. Because which of us, has any of us participated in an IPO outside of Kenya? Chances are no. So we need to be intentional in how we build the capacity. And the last one I was going to say is, and it's just to put it out there because of the issue of youth. I'm always very passionate about the youth. The youth are very powerful. And what shapes their power is what they believe. When we believe the worst about ourselves, and we're very negative about our country, it's to our own disadvantage. If there are people out there who globally look around and they say, where can we invest in Africa? And Kenya becomes number one, that should tell you there's something that you're not seeing or something that you're not appreciating. If you're not part of, if you don't know where that $600 million landed in Kenya and where it went, nasema kumekauka, there's something, you're not positioning yourself correctly. So as we go through this, our media, I gave up on the newspaper, the standards and all. I'm not mentioning just one, but basically I gave up on traditional, conventional media because all we hear is negative, because they believe it's only negative that sells. Kenya has a very powerful, positive narrative. And you need to tap into that narrative to position yourself adequately to be part of the engine that's going to transform Africa. Because that transformation is not starting anywhere else in the continent, it's starting in this country. And you have the privilege of living in the country that has the most valuable real estate in terms of access to venture capital. Per capita, we are second to none.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Director Yusuf, pick it up from there.
Thank you. I know the speaker preceding me has also delved into the issue of institutions, which is okay. He has enriched it more. But I want to put it this way. Institutions that are strengthened, especially by host countries and also by international community, the reason is for two reasons. One, we will require international accountability because Kenya is part of the global village. And I would go to give a good example of the COVID that Doctor has said about it. There were international protocols to fight COVID. So there was no way we could have our own because people were crossing borders and everywhere. So a small negligence on our part is going to impact the global community. So, and that is why international actors have to come in and strengthen our health institutions. Number two, there are international partners that are recognized for their effort in a particular sector. And I want to give a good example of UNICEF and Save the Children in education, because they are the leaders in education. And they have written much about education, and much recently now, there's something that is as emerging, and it's called education in emergencies. Because before, education was just lumped together, the response for all our issues was just once. We take food there, and if it's Red Cross or if it's another organization, but we never thought about how to integrate gender inclusivity, issues of FGM, issues of education in response. So look at the global community. They are telling us these institutions are very crucial if we are to normalize very fast. And education was seen as one of the things to see a normal community, even after floods or disaster. That schools have resumed. People ask, have schools resumed? Look at it. Are schools operating? So that's a critical, and that is why institutions have been strengthened by international community, especially in cross-border surveillance, intelligence sharing, and also forensics. Anglo-leasing, you can remember all of you. One of the key projects was building of a forensic lab. I don't know how far it has gone and whether it has stalled, but that's something very easy. In the rest, you have seen in other countries, the developed countries, you can just get a fingerprint of a suspect, and even where he has passed. And now we are only relying on CCTV camera, where electricity even goes off in Kenya. You understand how it happens. So that's why we need to strengthen our institutions, the police, the education sector, and even the civil society. And maybe one aspect of strengthening institutions is the civil society. I want to come back to it. Remember, I know most of these young people who are here today have not been there maybe for the last 35 years. We had situations where the government does not conform to international community, and there are sanctions. I'm sure we did not realize sanctions for the last 15 years, isn't it? And the reason is very easy, because the international community is investing in CSOs that will go to the communities, and the community will agitate for whatever they want. So look at that. It's a safer route, and it will make people, and that one is sustainable. Sanctions are not sustainable. Yeah, America is going to put sanctions on you, you go to China. But when you enlighten the community is there for sustainability, and they will only ask for what is right. So that's why it's important to invest in our CSOs and in our institutions. And one good reason is international accountability. I like that. Yes, because every year there is monitoring frameworks for international commitments in Kenya. And people are seeing the progress. How much was allocated? How much human resource was allocated? How much money was allocated? Where have you gone in this? Are people aware? What is the level of awareness of people who have not even gone to school about this? So these are crucial things. And for you to change organizations' governance, it must come from the people. But again, I want to reiterate something very crucial, that information from CSOs. Remember, CSOs go to radio stations in Somali language, Maasai language, Samburu language, and tell them what is in the bill in the local language and how it will affect the price of that half kilo she's buying, not the junk technical terms that are used in the budget. So it's very crucial. So my appeal is, let us use social media and public information responsibly. Thank you.
You know, I love that you brought up the issue of the FMs, because that touches the hearts of the people, the bottom line, isn't it? And I want you to pick up, James, pick up on open governance dashboards, because I think what Director Yusuf is talking about relates to that. The issue of what dashboards should we have, what should a citizen expect, what should they be looking for as success for them. Remember, you have your metrics for success from where you sit, but what does a common mwananchi say? Yes, we have done well. Karibu.
I'll talk about the dashboards, and if you allow me, I'll also say something about the youth, because that is a space we operate in. But picture this. You go to JKIA, you're traveling, or you're picking up someone. Especially if you're using KQ, when you get to, you've checked in, what is the first thing you look at? Anyone would go to look at the screen that is put there. You want to confirm, is my flight still on time? Has it been rescheduled? Has it been cancelled? That is the simplest display of a dashboard. Now, in governance matters, it exists in law, especially for county governments. The law provides for them to establish dashboards, and many of them have established very, very proper dashboards. If you look at counties like Muranga now, Makueni, and I think it must be Kilifi or Kakamega as well. So what the law requires for county governments to do is to put every piece of document that they have in the spirit of the documents that the county government holds belong to the people. They are public documents. So they need to be placed, their websites need to be robust and diverse and dynamic, that they have, it's almost a house. You get into the website, here you see all bills, here you see all the CECs, here you see the portfolio of all the CEOs, here you see all the projects that have been planned for, you see the ADP in real time. You see the CIDP in real time. You can see the budget expenditure in real time. You don't have to wait for the Auditor General and the Controller of Budgets. That if I log into Marsabit website now, I should be able to know what are they doing as far as roads is concerned in the next 6 months. I should be able to know from their website how much money have they spent in this financial year. I should be able to know how much money are they spending on the water sector. That is what the law provides for. So those dashboards, the law has provided for them. But there are county governments like the few I have highlighted, there could be more, that are doing it well. Others have just patched things there. Just so when you're doing social audits, because part of what the CSOs do and equip communities to do is social audits, is so that if you go to the website, you can see the ADP there, you can see the report there, you can see a project implementation report there. But it needs to be that I can go to the website of Machakos County and I can do a social audit on the website without calling a single individual, without walking into any office. So those dashboards, they need to exist in that manner. But also,
I'll ask you a question.
Yes.
Dashboards for this 75-year-old woman,
yes,
who has never gone to school.
yes.
What is the equivalent of that dashboard? I loved what you did with the anti-FGM. I loved what you did, and there's something that has changed. How can we bring it to bear so that we have it at that level, even as you continue with this conversation?
We go back to two things.
Madam Moderator, kindly allow me to interject. It's already 4:06. And I'm happy because the way you are elucidating the topic, we can even go up to tomorrow morning. And the audience, I can see they are listening and watching and taking notes. But taking cognizance of time, I can add you like 10 minutes to wrap up, and also within the 10 minutes do the Q&A so that we can call it a day. So within the 10 minutes, let me give you 15 minutes. Within 15 minutes, as T is ready, Q&A, summarize, and then we call it a day. Back to you, Dr. Ari.
Wow. Can we clap for our very able panel? We forgot time. All right, I wanted to ask you to...
Just,
oh, yes, sorry.
just allow me to spend 1 minute to finish on the dashboard. So because when you say dashboard, those of us who live in the urban centers, we see technology, we see the things that Dr. Karanja deals with, a lot of frames and whatever, but it can be as simple as, going back to public participation and the FM stations, simple as the governor dispatching their CECs, their CEOs, their directors to communities on a rotational basis. Let me give you a perfect example. In the last 1 week, the CS for Treasury and National Planning, CPA John Badi, yesterday, was it yesterday or the day before, he spent almost 3 hours engaging with the citizens on live TV. This morning, for about another 3 hours, he was doing the same. And that is one media house. He'll be in many, many other media houses. That is him applying the learning of the last finance bill, that there were positive things that we didn't know, that they didn't talk to us about. So that is him implementing a sense of a dashboard. That is what the governors would do. They have ward administrators, they have sub-county administrators who are on our payroll. Why don't they sit with us periodically and demonstrate to us? The governor doesn't need to talk about the entire county. Just let the ward administrator come to us every month and talk to us affairs of our ward.
Can
We
I
will be
throw
happy.
in then with that, village barasas? I think that is where it comes in, where we have the chief, the village administrator, that bottom line, getting to the woman in the market,
Yes.
and people like that, so that they are able to articulate those
Absolutely.
ideas.
And now every community has an FM station.
There we are.
Literally.
There we are.
Yeah.
All right, what I wanted to ask us before our time runs out is, what is our vision? I had asked you about challenges, we've talked about them. So what is our vision for the future? Remember, the topic that we started our discussion is civil service advocacy and multi-stakeholder collaboration for inclusive governance. Remember the last part, for inclusive governance. So from that corner coming this way, what is your vision? What are the 3 things that we must do? What is our call for action? Starting from you.
Thank you. The first thing that we personally I foresee is a very conducive environment, co-creation of solutions between the government, the non-state actors, the private sector, but most importantly, the last in the equation, who are the special interest groups. If that happens and we have co-creation of solutions, then the future is much more promising, perhaps, than the present is. So what are the things that we need to do? One is that we need to recede ground. So the government must go back and take its space. I'm not saying it has already moved away from its space, but the government must always sit on its space comfortably and with a lot of authority and power necessarily so to be exercised. The non-state actors as well takes their space. They are not competing, they are complementing the civil service. They are complementing the executive, they are complementing the 3 arms of government and the 2 levels of government, whether it's national government and the county governments as well. Lastly, I know you're picking up into that, is to really empower the special interest groups and understand they have a contribution to public service delivery. It is not just all them to be served, but they also have feedback for the public service. And if we can listen into that, the civil society, the government, the private sector would listen to the needs of the special interest groups, will make a whole difference exponentially within a very short time. Thank you so much.
I would hate to cut any of us short, but I want us to be as brief as possible since we have the audience and we still have the wrap-up. Kindly, Director.
Thank you, moderator. I think we are coming to the end of our discussion. The interesting thing about the first thing I will urge is to have a public servant who is intrinsically motivated, because that's where our public service starts. I don't want to say he's well remunerated, because there are those who are well remunerated, but still we have issues, and that's our culture. So we need to conform our culture to the ethics that exist in our constitution. Number 2, we must reach the unreached. And the reason is very simple. Because when you are planning a program and a response, and you have not factored in the unreached, then you must know that your program and your response will be affected. Because you go out and you find that your planning was wrong, so it takes you back. Number 2, there is no competition between civil service and the civil society completely. Actually, the civil society are inculcating best practices in the public service, and they're using international trends, which is good for us, global trends that are acceptable. So we must accommodate them, and we must not be hostile to them, even if we want to achieve our things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr.
I think for me, in my vision, let me start with that. The vision I have is really to see a very strong bioeconomy in Kenya. For me, working in the life sciences, health is the most regulated industry in the world, period. Everything is life and death. So how do we strike the appropriate balance of research and innovation and regulation? The second part of it is also understanding that it's not just between the regulators and the innovators, the researchers, the community is part of this. As I said earlier, misinformation, disinformation is becoming a big pain. How do we address it? How do we demystify science? How do we demystify the market opportunities that are there so that people are able to understand what's in it for them and why does it matter? So to me, that's where I see especially the need for the civil society to come on board and help us to do that, because I think as people who are in the research innovation space, they speak very technical language. The regulatory science needs to be developed as much as we invest in the research and innovation. If our regulatory capacity is low, it's also a problem. And then coming back to the community, how do you demystify all of this work and all these opportunities so that people can actually see, is this Vision 2030 a pipe dream, or is it real? Is it happening? Is it not? And what's in it for me? And how do I position myself?
I like that. I want to ask the main presenter, James, to make his remarks, after which I will ask our very able MC to ask the audience to give us 2 or 3 questions, perspectives that maybe we could use as our wrap-up. So karibu, James, in 1 minute.
Thank you. I will say,
Maybe before James proceeds, just to know whether the audience have some questions so that we can give it as a wrap-up from the panelist. Any question from the audience? So that if there are no questions, we can give each panelist a minute just to say kwaheri, and we call it a day. Anyone? At the count of 5, democracy, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Summarize.
I clap for them. Okay, karibu, James.
Thank you.
So he's doing the wrap-up, or he finishes the vision and then the wrap-up?
All
So,
right.
yeah.
The vision, I'll put it in 2 ways. One of the things I have always desired as a vision is that Africa would design solutions for Africa. I think we have depended on the West for a long time. Every year, we have the Africa Summit. About 6 of them happen every year, except none of them happens in Africa. We have the Africa-China Summit in Beijing. We have the Africa-Russia Summit, the Africa-Italy Summit, Africa-Turkey Summit. Everyone is hosting Africa Summit, but they are not happening in Africa. And what happens? We don't get anything out of it. The only thing that comes out of it is Russia sells more weapons to us. The only thing that comes out of it is that Italy sells us, everyone sells us more things than we get out of it. And when we realized that at ELF Africa, where I work, we designed what we call the Africa for Africa Youth Summit. And we held the first one last year, where we brought over 1,000 young people from 50 countries on one platform to discuss their shared challenges in their different countries, the solutions they are using, and to share learnings and interventions that they are applying. And we'll be doing the 2nd edition. That is my first vision, Africa to design for Africa from Africa. The second part of the vision, I'll just give you our vision at Emerging Leaders Foundation, our vision is a just and dignified society with active and responsible citizenship. And that is taking back responsibility to duty bearers on one hand and rights holders on the other hand. The duty bearers need to promote and guarantee justice and dignity for all people. Rights holders need to be active and responsible. We can no longer sit as the 55 million Kenyans and wait for government to do everything. Government cannot be cleaning the drainage in my backyard every day. What is my responsibility?
Thank you very much. Daktari?
I think I'd actually already given my vision, so I'll just
So
pass
then your parting shot.
My parting shot, I think just going back to my earlier comment that we're really blessed we're in this amazing country. I don't say that from a point of ignorance. I know there are challenges, but I always ask myself, what is it that makes people who come to Kenya never leave? Whether it is we've seen ambassadors of the US, the country was trying to go to come and start looking for a Kenyan girl to marry around here. So you have to, and I keep repeating this because these things have happened and you know it's true. So what is it that they are seeing that we're not seeing in ourselves? Because the minute we change that perception, I think this country is just punching below its weight, but it's really because we are internalizing a narrative that is not 100% correct, probably not even 80% correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mine is to say that all is not lost. For those of us who lived the last 45 years, we have made significant progress in Kenya. Because I know for the young guys who are here, there's not much comparison you can make to the last 20 years. But we have made significant progress. Number two, I'm looking forward for public institutions that will serve Kenyans with dignity and professional touch.
Thank you so much. Last but not least, Paul, Director Paul.
Thank you so much. Mine is to encourage everyone that we have a great responsibility of putting last first. And it's not easy, but I'm also a proponent of foresight thinking, and I urge all the state agencies, the duty bearers as mentioned in here, the academia, the non-state actors, the private sector, but most importantly, the individuals themselves to embrace the foresight thinking, and the public service also embrace the public thinking, and the future is not the present. It shall be completely different and better.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want us to put our hands together for them. They have made a lot of very powerful points. I want to think that one thing that we must encourage, it must come out very clearly, is the issue of integrity, the issue of giving your everything to this country or for this country, and above all else, knowing that you have to leave a legacy. At Kenya School of Government, where I work, we have programs that not only train the youth, the public service, but we also have non-public service programs. We also have programs for what is called Under the Tree series, where we are training people right under the tree. So with that, I want to thank you very much. You've been such an engaging panel, and thank you so much, our presenter. You have seen that these people are actually going to continue like forever. So makofi kwao on the count of 3. Nyayo, 1, 2, and 3. Thank you so much. Back to the MC. Asanteni sana.
Let us appreciate our moderator, Dr. Florence Kithinji, also with a round of applause. Makofi mazuri kwa moderator wetu. Nitawaomba watulie tu papo hapo, ndugu yangu Sakwa, Bwana Hamisi Musa, Bwana Paul Kuria. Daktari Robert, the choir needs to do something. Mwalimu, cheza kama wewe, alafu tumalize na wimbo wa taifa. It is a gift to our panelists because they've done a great job for us, a very sanguine presentation and engagement. In fact, I was getting tempted to tell them to stop, but I was feeling, no, something good is coming. So the moment I need to write a note, wind up, Dhamiri naniambia, Mike, wacha kiburi, wacha. Na ninatulia. Sio kwamba nilikuwa nimesahau kwamba muda umeenda. Mwalimu, kama uko tayari, tupe kibao. And this is for our panelists, wakiongozwa na moderator wetu, discussants wetu na presenter. Give them a song that they can join you and dance. And also to all the audience in the house, thank you so much for staying with us. Tusimame pia, tucheze pamoja tunapomaliza siku. May you be upstanding.
Tuishangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda. Kenya nchi tunayoipenda. Kenya nchi tunayoipenda. Twajivunia sana tukijiita wa Kenya, nchi yenye baraka. Kenya nchi yenye baraka. Kenya nchi yenye baraka. Kenya makao yetu ni nchi nchi ya kupendeza, kamwe hatutaiacha, kamwe Kenya hatutaiacha, kamwe Kenya hatutaiacha. Anayependa Kenya ni yule mwenye kutenda haki kwa watu wote, mtu mwenye kutenda haki, mtu mwenye kutenda haki. Na ukipenda Kenya ujitengane na mambo yenye kuvunja amani. Hatutaki matata Kenya, hatutaki matata Kenya. Wenza wangu Kenya kipenzi chetu, wenza wangu Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele. Kenya kipenzi chetu, nchi yenye upendo, hatutaacha Kenya daima na milele. Kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele. Wenzangu, Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele. Tumeapa sote wananchi wa Kenya kutumikia Kenya daima na milele. Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele. Wenzangu, Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele. Kenya ni mama yetu, tena ni baba yetu, hatutaacha Kenya daima na milele.
Tuende Luhyaland kidogo. Luhyaland, Luhyaland, Luhyaland.
Mwenzangu,
tuende Luhyaland.
Hatutaiacha milele. Sitaiacha Kenya, nchi yangu mimi ni mwana Kenya. Daima umoja wetu Kenya tudumishe. Nitatetea haki za Wakenya na majirani wangu nitalinda. Sitaharibu mali ya wengine, wala sitapotoshwa na wabaya. Wenzangu, wenzangu, Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele. Oh, wenzangu, Kenya kipenzi chetu, hatutaiacha milele. Tushangilie Kenya, taifa letu tukufu, Kenya tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda, Kenya nchi tunayoipenda.
Tuende Luhyaland kidogo tu. Luhyaland kidogo mwalimu. Mwalimu tumalizie na Luhyaland kidogo kidogo tu alafu tufanye anthem.
Umumizi bora wa mama, abavangunda yanza. Umumizi